While retirement is generally seen as a time of relaxation and self-focus, God calls us to love, serve, and help others for a lifetime. He has been preparing us for this retirement season, literally our entire lives. In retirement, countless Christians enter a state of spiritual dormancy, not knowing how they are called to have an impact for God's kingdom. The Retirement Reformation seeks to encourage and empower the 50 million Christians approaching or in retirement to embrace the calling God has been preparing in them. When the world says it's time to stop, you can begin to have your greatest impact. Welcome to iRetire4Him, the mouthpiece of the Retirement Reformation, where our goal is to journey from retirement to reformation so you can say, I retire for Him.
Reaching out to the 50 million Christ followers in America who are approaching or already in retirement, you've tuned into iRetire4Him, the mouthpiece of the Retirement Reformation. I'm your host, Jim Brangenberg, along with the founder of the Retirement Reformation, Bruce Brynsma. We'd love for you to check us out online, retirementreformation.org, or in the App Store, Retirement Reformation. Please download the app, engage with us, find the tools that will help you reform your thinking of retirement and to celebrate what God has you ahead in this next stage of life. You know, the new year brings great anticipation for young and old alike. For all of us, it's 1 year further away from this ridiculous COVID-19 pandemic. Most of us look forward to new beginnings and a chance to start over on our resolutions, the ones we left out on January 5th of last year. There's a freshness as we look towards 2022 and a fondness for some as they reflect on 2021. However, sometimes looking back at 2021 brings pain and sorrow. Sometimes looking forward reminds us that we're alone. So, all emotions get flowing around the new year. So how does God want us to react? As far as I remember, there are not any psalms about the new year, but there are tons of scriptures referencing new beginnings and fond remembrances. So, how are you looking towards the new year? Is it with fondness, sadness, or some mixed emotions? Here to parse through this subject with me today is Bruce Brynsma with the Retirement Reformation. Happy New Year's, Bruce.
Happy New Year's, Jim. It's that to all of our listeners. We're excited about new beginnings because points of transition we know are absolutely critical in our lives, and the decisions we make and the way we think about those transitions are absolutely critical to what's ahead. And New Year's is one of those times.
And it's funny, it's just another day, but we do make that paradigm shift on, hey, it's a new day, it's a new year. And we're like, okay, I got a fresh start. Bruce, when you were young, how did your family celebrate New Year?
Well, we had for our Christmas time together, we brought all of our family together, uncles and aunts and cousins and so on. And then we did it again a week later for New Year's. Now, part of New Year's was there was always sports involved, whether it be our sports or in later years when television became available. That's how old I am. When television became available to be able to watch it on a really small screen about that big, that was there. And so it was always an excitement about what was ahead and what was coming. And in our family, I think we did a really good job of not looking backwards, but really looking forwards for that new year. I know that's not true for everyone, because when there's been pain and sorrow and that has come, and so many people have passed because of COVID or other issues, and you look back and there's a certain sadness that goes with it. But I think with that sadness is also the promise and the opportunity for what's ahead.
So when you think of the new year, that's just a couple of days away, what kind of emotions play in your heart today?
Well, the biggest emotion is that I'm excited that Ohio State's going to be playing for the national championship.
Okay.
Now, that may or may not be.
You got that off your chest?
That may or may not be true, but you know, those football games certainly play a role. I know for the years that we lived in Pasadena, often we lived on Orange Grove, and for those of you that have been to the Rose Bowl, it was the float number 34 was right outside our door, and so the excitement of when our kids would come and grandkids would come, and and we go out at 6 a.m. and see all the floats and all of the color that was there. And then the bands would line up.
The Tournament of Roses parade. I mean, I hope they bring that back. Is that going to come back this year?
Absolutely it is. Absolutely it is. And what an amazing experience to look forward to and to be able to live right where those kinds of things happen. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people that don't live in that kind of a place and don't have that experience, that there's a little sadness because they are separated from loved ones, because they are lonely, or because they're thinking about next year and there isn't something to look forward to for them. And so for them, we want to encourage them that God has a plan for their lives, not only for what happened last year, but what's going to happen next year.
So let's talk about that, because the new year is that time for the paradigm shift. For me, it's always like, okay, Lord, I screwed up a lot in 2021. Can we start some new things in 2022? But for a lot of us, it's like, okay, I have been trapped at home for the last 2 years. For some people in our country, in certain states, they have been trapped at home for almost 2 years. And they're like, I want to look forward with fondness to 2022, but I want to have purpose. How can the Retirement Reformation help them find purpose in the next days of their life?
We know that God has a plan for our life and for every stage of it. And so the preparation, perhaps during the last 2 years, when you reflect on it, perhaps there's some things that you're able to take away from that pain or that loneliness that now allows you to be able to build a new foundation for what is ahead. One of the things we know about, as the manifesto reminds us, that there is freedom in Christ. There's freedom in what's going to be ahead. And so God perhaps has put on your heart, as he has on mine, some new ideas, some new directions, some new ways that I never thought about before, or perhaps exposure to a category of people. Could be homeless, could be children, could be single moms, could be those in jail, could be those that are living next door, those who've experienced pain, but has brought that to our mind, and that we have the beginnings of a new passion that can lead us to take next steps that will bring meaning and purpose and joy and freedom in that next year, in this coming year, in 2022.
Bruce, you bring up the manifesto. We haven't told people to get out there to the manifesto, but we encourage you to go out to retirementreformation.org/manifesto. And if you can't figure out how to spell that, I couldn't either. Go to the website. It'll say, hey, have you signed our manifesto? On that manifesto, you'll find 10 points that are like, these are the things that we agree with together on things that we want in our retirement. Things like freedom and preparation and contentment and stewardship. I'll read them all. Love and community and intentionality, focus, service, and advocacy. There's so much as retirees that you have to offer the nation around you. We desperately want you to invest in those people that God has placed you around. Go out there, sign the manifesto, print the manifesto, and let that guide and direct your life in 2022. You're listening to I Retire for Him with your host, Jim Brangenberg, and of course, Bruce Brinesma, the founder of the Retirement Reformation. We'll be right back after an incredible segment 2 coming up here with a special guest. You're listening to I Retire for Him. Don't go away.
The Retirement Reformation wants to come alongside you as you navigate in each stage of your retirement. Our online resources include our blog, our downloadable books, and life planning studies, as well as membership and coaching options. Go to retirementreformation.org and use these resources to begin the transformation of your retirement. Journey from retirement to reformation, so you can say, I retire for Him. That's retirementreformation.org. Now, back to the show.
Hey, welcome back to I Retire for Him, the mouthpiece of the Retirement Reformation. Bruce, last podcast, we were in the middle of a conversation with Steve and Ruth Carter, and I asked a question and got us sent off into Ruth's story, and we didn't get to capture much of Steve's story, so we asked them to come back on this podcast and to just share a little bit of what's going on in their lives. Bruce, take it away.
Very good, Steve. So it's good. The last time we were together, we were sharing a muffin over breakfast, and so it's good to be able to now be able to you've got 2 days before you're going to actually move from Northern Kentucky to Indianapolis. You've got a history as a surgeon, the leadership experience you've had at the projects there in Northern Kentucky. So tell us a little bit about your experience with the in Northern Kentucky and what you're looking forward to in the transition. I know you said you're moving to a senior facility and you're not totally sure what to expect, but how do you think God's going to treat you?
Yes, well, you think in terms of how he's treated you in the past, and he's treated us terrifically in the past, and so we have confidence that he'll do the same. We came, as Ruth said, to Northern Kentucky to be closer to family, but also to be of service at the museum. And Ken Ham asked us to be in charge of the volunteer program. That program handles maybe 2,400 people, volunteer days a year. So it's a huge program. We run a guest house, and it was just an ideal situation for us to live 5 minutes from the museum, to be able to welcome and help these volunteers get oriented and working at the museum to see the inside workings. And on top of that, we were able to see the ark from some rolling hills in Northern Kentucky to its completion. I mean, it was just unbelievable to see trees fall, road graders there, and then all of a sudden the ark go up. So it's been a real blessing for us to be there. And on top of that, the volunteer stuff, Ruth came really as an obedient wife. I mean, she was in ministry, but she wasn't a creation teacher at all. And all of a sudden, she learns how to do all this stuff, and it's just opened up her ministry. And so it's been a tremendous blessing for both of us to be involved in this. As far as going to Indianapolis, we don't know what that'll hold, but we think there will be a lot of opportunities there for us to be involved in some type of ministry there.
We know there will be, well, just simply the stories of your experiences over the last 12 years will be an encouragement to many, because to be able to bear witness to how God uniquely prepared you for an experience that from the outside wouldn't appear would fit at all, and yet in God's plan, He puts those mosaics together in such unique and special ways. Let me ask you one other question, because we've got, as we look forward to New Year's, this podcast will be on just the week before New Year's, and so as you think about, what do you want to put on your New Year's list as a new expectation for 2022? Anything that God's put on your heart that you really want to put out and experience that maybe you haven't before, or that will affirm what you've done before?
Well, we've not been ones that make up big New Year's resolutions. I think I'm not smart enough to do that and know what the future holds. But we would want to transition into this part of our life and to finish well. Whether that means this is the finish or whether it's not the finish, we want to have a useful and productive and a blessed life ourselves, but also to be a blessing to others. So that would be our goal, even though we may not write that down.
There's kind of 3 stages in retirement. There's a very it's interesting. There's a bell ringing in the background, and I have no idea where that's coming from, but I think it's very appropriate that we're ringing the bell for your next stage of life. But there are 3 stages in retirement. That first one is very active, another one is very mentoring, and a third one is reflective. And there's ministry opportunities in all 3 stages, and God calls you. So I have every confidence that the bell that I hear ringing in the background is the bell for your next stage of life, and how God's going to use both who you are, who He created you to be, and the experiences that you've used to become closer to Him in ways so that finishing well will not just be a theory, but an absolute practice and a model for others.
So, Ruth, I got a question for you. So, you're moving to Indianapolis. There's uncertainty ahead of you. How do you deal with the uncertainty? Because a lot of our listeners are in their retirement years. They've had some exciting years like you guys have had doing volunteer work, being involved in neat things. But then the next stage, they're moving again. And moving when you're chronologically superior is not near as easy as it was when we were in our 30s and our 40s. How do you deal with the uncertainty on those days where you're like, I don't know what's next?
Well, I've been by personality the type of person who never lets any grass grow under my feet. But you're right. There is some uncertainty. And I have thought about this, but I think Steve nailed it on the head when he said, you go back to the faithfulness of God in the past, and that's what you bank on for the future. So when I get up in the morning, I usually have no question about what's going to fill my day. There's usually way too much stuff to fill my day. And now I get up and it's kind of nice not to have it so stuffed full and to just wait and see, to have time with a neighbor, to be able to go 20 minutes down the road and be with 4 grandkids and be intentional about time spent with them, not just buzzing in and out of their lives so quickly. So I think it's only going to be great.
Well, we are looking forward to perhaps another conversation 2 or 3 years from now to then be able to look back through that rearview mirror and see how God's faithfulness. We know that we are called to be faithful for a lifetime, and that finishing well is one other descriptive term of what that faithfulness looks like. And so we just appreciate your past faithfulness, your confidence in God's faithfulness for what's ahead, and our encouragement to you for the physical challenges of the next couple of weeks as you're going through the move and you're getting resettled.
Right. Steve and Ruth Carter, thank you so much for being on iRetire4Him today.
Thank you.
And if you're curious about the Ark Encounter in the Creation Museum, check out answersingenesis.org, answersingenesis.org. There'll be links to both of the sites. Highly recommend it. It's a phenomenal experience. Take your kids, your grandkids, your great-grandkids. Make a several-day trip there. You can't do it all in one day. There's just too much to see. Especially take some time for the zip lines by the Ark. They're phenomenal. We'll be right back with more on iRetire4Him. Every iRetire4Him show goes so quickly we don't often get to remind you that there are 2 resources you should be checking out right now. I recommend that you get a copy of the Retirement Reformation book and the iRetire4Him book. Retirement Reformation focuses on the mindset and behavioral changes needed, let's just say paradigm shifting, that is needed to live out your faith in retirement. iRetire4Him is focused on many of the ways you can put your faith into action by investing your life into others in your retirement years. Get both at the Retirement Reformation website in the bookstore, retirementreformation.org. That's retirementreformation.org. Hey, welcome back to iRetire4Him, the mouthpiece of the Retirement Reformation. We'd love for you to check us out online, retirementreformation.org, or in the App Store, Retirement Reformation. Bruce, tell me about, let's get personal. Let's get a little raw here. What are you looking forward to most in 2022?
In 2022, I'm looking forward to being able to expand the message of the Retirement Reformation to thousands of more people, and to be able to embrace those who say, that's an important message, resetting our lives, finding meaning and purpose, and then all the elements of the manifesto that you briefly outlined for us, but embracing those and finding a community amongst our church, amongst other friends, and engaging with them to be able to find what's next. One of the keys to the Retirement Reformation is the resetting of our minds, the resetting of our expectations. And so we have that opportunity, and I'm just really excited about that. I'm excited about the fact that we're going to be able to travel this year. And, we've been pretty much stuck. We've done so many podcasts virtually, and all the virtual things that we've all done. I'm excited about being face to face with a church and its surrounding seniors who are being brought together, maybe for the first time, to be able to have an evangelistic service, to be able to speak and to be able to speak into their lives and to be able to bring them a resetting for them and be able to bring them together so that your church has a whole new generation of people that are alive for Him.
That's fantastic. A lot of our listeners are retired already or looking forward to retirement in 2022, but they want purpose. They want their lives to matter. They've just retired from something, but they didn't retire to something, as you love to say. How can we help? How can the Retirement Reformation be an aid in guiding them to finding their purpose? Is there a specific tool that you use when you're sitting down with a senior, somebody chronologically superior, to help them figure out that purpose?
Well, it starts with, first of all, the recognition that there is an extended period of time in which God is graciously giving us to be able to make a difference in the lives of others. Second is to realize that the call on our lives to make a difference is one that not only extends during that time of retirement, but accelerates during that time of retirement. And so to be able to encourage people to recognize that the greatest days of meaning and purpose and joy and freedom may be ahead of them. Once they grab onto that, then the next question is, how are we going to make a difference? And therein gets a very personal conversation.
Right, but your book, Charting the Course, is where I was going. I was trying to get you to plug your own book. I'm going to help you plug it for you because it kind of helps figure this out. Like, how do I get there? Charting your course is one of those ones that'll just ask you the questions like, what did you retire to? And maybe you didn't retire to something, but now you're going, I need to retire to something because I'm going crazy. I can only pick up so many seashells. I can only go on so many hikes. I can only play so much golf. I can only play so much tennis or pickleball or whatever that may be. That maybe you're, but Bruce, charting your course can really help people get there, can't it?
Two of the questions that book asks, number one is, first of all, who are you? And then let me just add, who are you in Christ? What has He created you to be? Since the beginning of time, your birth, your DNA, all of your experiences and the challenges. So first of all, who are you? And then what is your calling for this next stage of life? And to be able to learn, who are you? What is your calling? And then how to be able to apply that. That's where we find the meaning and the purpose and the joy and the freedom.
I love that. I encourage everybody to go to retirementreformation.org, get a copy of Charting Your Course. Bruce, one of the things is a passion for me. In fact, I wrote a whole book about it. Our book, iRetire4Him, is all about mentoring. What I've seen is that our culture today has a serious deficit of mentoring, where we separate the older generations from the younger generations, and we expect the younger generations to understand and know the things the older generations know, but we don't encourage them to even talk. Okay, we create platforms that are for young people, not for old people, or chronologically superior, however you want to call them. Let's talk about mentoring, the value of mentoring, for our Retirement Reformation followers, for the people listening to the iRetire4Him podcast. This is something that's so key because all of our lives, we've got so much stuff to pass on to the next generation. How are you a mentor in your own life, Bruce? I mean, I know you're not sitting down, you don't have a professional mentoring service, but you mentor people all day long, don't you?
You do. Everyone that God puts you in connection to, you have an opportunity to be able to impact their life with your story or with your questions. With your story or with your questions. And so the key as we grow older and come to that stage where God has granted us so many experiences and that where we are taking next steps in our spiritual life, but to be able to meet with someone and to be able to ask a question which will lead to a dialogue, which will allow you to be able to share or to encourage. Therein lies the mentoring relationship. I had an old sales manager of mine one time that he said, Bruce, who's in charge of a conversation? Is it the person who's speaking or the person who's asking a question?
And you said?
And I said, I think it's the person who's speaking. And he said, wrong. And he said, is the person who's asking the question. And I have never forgotten that. So as a grandparent, as a neighbor, as a friend, to be able to begin a dialogue that can lead to the sharing of God's wisdom through your experience and the experiences that you have, they all start with a question and then another question and then a third question. And it's amazing if you will practice that with your grandkids or with a neighbor. Matter of fact, I have one of those dialogues firmly in my mind where I was with someone for a half an hour. I think I asked 3, maybe 4 questions. When we were ready to leave and part, he said, do you know how much I've enjoyed being with you? Oh, what did he say? Oh, our conversation has been so good. I spoke maybe 3 minutes out of the 30. But then we now have the beginning of a relationship that the next time we meet, we have a platform on which God can speak through me to be able to be of assistance to him.
It's so powerful. And you're right, asking questions. And I'm the guy that likes to talk. So, I love to ask questions though, too. Bruce, I want to put this out there as a challenge, a New Year's resolution challenge, not one of those nasty ones that drive us crazy, like let's eat less food, certainly less chocolate, and exercise more. Forget those. I'm going to die from something I like eating. But how about a New Year's resolution where let's pick 1 or 2 people we can pour our lives into in 2022. I like to put it this way. 2 lives transformed in 2022, mine and yours. Because there's people that we know that love to hang out with us that we can pour our lives into. It's the greatest gift we can ever give as ourselves. And as retirees, we've got more time than ever. I think this is a fantastic opportunity. New Year's, make that resolution. Pour your life into somebody else. What do you think, Bruce? Can you jump along with that one?
Oh, I can. I think the opportunity that God has already appointed who those people are. And you just need to be aware and listen and watch and then be able to step into that relationship with a question. And you will know because you will sense God's Spirit in the conversation. You won't have to figure out what more to say. His Spirit will give you the language, will give you the words, will give you the encouragement. And wow, if we could meet a year from now and the hundreds and hundreds of people that will have listened to this podcast, if each one of them had impacted 2 lives, praise God.
Amen to that. Thank you, Bruce Brynsma. Check out Bruce and the rest of all of his resources online, retirementreformation.org, retirementreformation.org. You've been listening to iRetire4Him, the mouthpiece of the Retirement Reformation with your hosts, Jim and Martha. Wow, Martha didn't join us today, though, Bruce. I don't know, for some reason it's out there. I apologize.
But we love her anyway.
We do love her. But with your host, Jim Brangenberg, and Retirement Reformation's founder, Bruce Brynsma. We're Christ followers journeying from retirement to reformation. So we can ultimately say together, all of us, I retire for him.
Thanks for listening to iRetire4Him with your hosts Jim and Martha Brangenberg and Retirement Reformation founder Bruce Brynsma. iRetire4Him is the mouthpiece of the Retirement Reformation. Most Christians tend to follow the world's pattern of rest and self-pampering during retirement. However, in your retirement, you can be focused on God's unique call to love, serve, and help others. This can be your best season of life if you take advantage of a life's worth of knowledge and experience and combine it with a greater freedom of time and money and invest it all in the generations both preceding and following you. The Retirement Reformation is encouraging Christians to find and follow God's call in all seasons and aspects of life, especially in retirement. Take time to sign the manifesto at retirementreformation.org and explore the wealth of resources available on our site. Join this movement of God and journey from retirement to reformation so you can say, I retire for Him. Go to retirementreformation.org.